Hey, what's up, good people? It's Jay Ray, the co-host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, this episode is sponsored by Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall presents Samora Pinderhughes and Friends performance of The Healing Project on February 10th, 2023 at 9 p.m. Purchase tickets for the performance at carnegiehall.org. Carnegie Hall, your seats are waiting. Welcome to a special episode of Q Points. My name is Jay Ray, sometimes known by my government as John Ray Cornegay III. And joining me today is Samora Pinderhughes. Samora Pinderhughes is a composer, pianist, vocalist, interdisciplinary artist, and surrealist whose work delves into all things our society tries to hide, about its history, about its structures, and about the individual and daily things we all experience but don't know how to talk about. His art is an invitation to feel things deeply and to think deeply about how we all live. He is known for his honest lyrics, his harmonic language, his vulnerable visuals, his sociopolitical commentary, and his commitment to making art that is of use to everyday life. Samora will be presenting The Healing Project at Carnegie Hall on February 10th, 2023. You can grab tickets at carnegiehall.org. Enjoy the conversation. Samora Pinderhughes, welcome to Q Points. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you this morning?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well and looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Wonderful. So we are here because you have an upcoming performance at Carnegie Hall on February 10th. This is actually, from my understanding, the New York premiere of The Healing Project. That's incredibly exciting. And if you give me a second, I actually want to read Carnegie Hall's description of this performance. So pianist, composer Samora Pinderhughes leads world-class musicians, composers, poets, and others in a new multidisciplinary work that explores the daily realities of violence, incarceration, policing, and detention in U.S. communities. Combining musical compositions with audio interviews and raw testimonials from 15 states across the country, The Healing Project is a condemnation of racial capitalism and the prison industrial complex, and an artistic celebration of resilience, healing, and resistance. That is beautiful, needed, and brilliant. Can you tell us a bit, what can folks expect from this performance?
Yeah, so we're kind of bringing together a bunch of different multiple streams of the Healing Project. The heart of the project is really in a series of audio conversations that I had over 5 years with folks around the country who I dealt with trauma from structural violence, which could be anything from experiences with the prison industrial complex to experiences with poverty, environmental racism, to experience with the police. So it's talking to them about the realities of the country, but also about their healing practices, how they move through things. Mm-hmm. And combining that with a series of incredible musical collaborators that kind of took that information and exploded it outward into a series of pieces. And so we're going to have a lot of different elements. We're going to have these audio interviews, these narratives threading through, but also going to have strings, choir, rhythm section, lots of different, musical elements to give to the listener. And we'll also have some visuals as well. So it's going to be definitely like a narrative kind of adventure to take with us around people's experience in this country.
I absolutely love that. I actually want to pull a quote from the website about the project and kind of dive into that a bit. On the website, it's written, "This is a spiritual project. It's about the deep levels we must access to get through the things that hurt us in life, about how much our current and historical U.S. systems, particularly the prison industrial complex, rob us of all the true ways to take care of ourselves and each other, and about how folks who truly love all the answers we seek are the very people who are never given the power in our society." How did this project come to be?
For me, it was the culmination really of the last 15 years of work that I've been wanting to do as an artist. Everything that I do is geared towards making artistic work that can be materially used. And what I mean by that is stuff that people can be moved by in a spiritual, sonic, visual way, an emotional way, and also something where they can come away and have tools for living as well, hopefully. And so I think the heart of this project is within the question, how can we share with each other the tools for living? Because the society is only giving us tools for death. So that's really the thesis statement of the project. And I think the hope that I find is in each other. The hope that I find in the world is not in the structures and the society and the tech and all that stuff. It's in the communities that we build and the scaffolding that we create to support each other. So that's what this project is really about. And that's what sent me on the journey of this project, which has now been about 10 years of working on it, and will be 10 years more, even more than that, because there's always more questions to answer.
Thank you so much for that. So we are having this conversation at a point in time. I'm going to actually date this conversation because I think that's really important. So we're having this conversation on January 30th, 2023. And it has been a rough weekend. And I have to be honest, I have chosen to, and I have been choosing over the last at least 5 years to not watch the violence that is inflicted upon us by law enforcement. Like, I've just like, nope, I don't want to see it. All of that. So we're in this moment of anger again around the murder of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, at the hands of law enforcement. And I'm curious for you, how are you processing this moment?
To be honest with you, my biggest concern in this moment is the support that the family needs, because I think that oftentimes that can be overshadowed in the spectacle and the response to the moment. And to be clear, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a response. I think my perspective on the response is that the response shouldn't be connected to one moment, but has to be continuous. So yes. The issue with the cycle we're in is that we only react when the most violent thing happens on camera, even though we know that these things are happening every day. And then people want to come out and do things for about 3 days, and then they want to go back and not pay attention anymore until the next spectacle. My hope is that at some point we'll figure out that we need to be consistent, and we need to tap in to the organizing that is happening and the people that are being consistent. We need to join those spaces, and we need to strengthen them, and we need to fortify ourselves for a long fight that is continuous instead of a kind of stutter step of response. I am very, very, very upset, of course, as everyone else is. And I think that there definitely needs to be a wrapping of arms around the family. And I hope that people will do that. And I hope they will receive the support that they need. There's only so much that can happen. They have to be able to grieve, and there's nothing that can bring the person back, and so we have to be able to support them as best we can. And then in the overall context, it's got to be revolution or nothing else to me. And that can look like a lot of different things, but I think we have to start asking questions about what that's going to look like and what that's going to take, because we're trying the same things over and over again and they're just not working. Mm-hmm. And I'm really tired of the performativity, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that I'm exempt from that, but I think that we have to come together and we have to figure out what it looks like to operate in different ways together to try to figure out how to put some real pressure. And I think that the performative ways are not functioning that way. I'm a huge believer in organization. I'm a huge believer in boycotts. I think boycotts and strikes really work. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge believer in figuring out the real question of how to come together and form a united front in terms of how we are going to build a long-term response mm-hmm. that shows we are not just going to be able to be played over and over again. Mm-hmm. Because the cycle is, okay, they already know what we're going to do. We're going to come out, we're going to protest for a few days, and they're like, okay, we're just going to wait this out. We're going to promise some stuff that we're never going to deliver, and then we're going to wait for them to forget.
Yes.
And so I'm not saying I know the answers, but I am saying that I think we have to figure out a different approach.
I agree with everything that you just said. It was interesting as I was listening to your work, and I've been asking this question myself over the last several years of what is the alternative, right? I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, right, for this conversation, but I want to take that idea and bring the music into it, because what we know is that no social justice movement is complete without music as a soundtrack to help people to, one, understand what's happening and dream, and be encouraged to fight for something better, right? Or something different, right? Music is like a direct part of that process. Can you talk to me a bit about how you see your work being used to comfort and embolden folks? Like, how do you see your work being used for that?
That's a great question. I think that I hope it's used, I guess, and it's great that you use those two words. I hope it's used in both of those kind of opposite but connecting ways, in which on the one hand, I think we try to strive for a certain vulnerability in the material, and that for me, there is hopefully a space in the music where people can actually kind of be wherever they need to be at for the most vulnerable of their processes, whether that's grieving, whether that's just, admitting the difficult parts of what one is going through, or just saying, I don't have it together, or, trying to figure this out. And then I think also there's the analysis that comes with trying to find one's place inside of all of it. And that is in different ways. Is how do I resist this, monster of a society that I don't believe in, but also how am I complicit in it? And I think we have to face both of those sides of that question too, if we're being real. So I think the music tries to deal with that. And then I think on the other side, I mean, there's obviously the critique. I think I am interested in, particularly with language combined with the music, kind of getting deep into the questions of how does the society really function and what's really upholding these structures that are so violent. Because, we know what the quote unquote tip of the spear is, but what is like behind that? I think that's a very important set of questions. For instance, just not to go on too much of a tangent, but I think if we're going to deal with the issue of police violence, we have to deal with the courts because they're not separate. But very often we're only dealing with the police force. We're not dealing with the prisons or the court. I don't think that makes any sense because what undergirds and kind of keeps in place the theory that we need the police force is the theory that we need prisons and the theory that the courts work, Mm-hmm. So for me, I think the music is trying to kind of get into the depth of what is really at the heart of this system and what are the kind of deeper structures, both physically and mentally, that keep it in place. Mm-hmm. And then I think, I think the last one is really just providing that resiliency for the fight. Because like I said, I do think that it's a lengthy one, and obviously our ancestors have taught us that. And I do think that the music can help there where, as we are kind of preparing to try to stick with it, there's obviously going to be a lot of different hardships through that process. And we need that stuff that just helps us stay grounded in it and helps us believe that it's worth continuing. And so I think, music has always been that for me. So that's the hope that I have for it.
Thank you for that. Speaking of your history and things that have connected you musically, so I caught as I was flying yesterday, I was like, oh, let me check out this interview. So you did an interview with Robin D.G. Kelly, and I was like, oh, this is perfect flight interviewing. Let me see what Brother Samora is talking about. And so a couple of artists, emerged, right? So Nina Simone emerged in the conversation in terms of like inspirations and things like that for you. I feel like when listening to your music, there's like three main things that come up for me. One, there's a cinematic quality in that I can see it as it's moving, which is really important for me from a connection perspective. Mm-hmm. The second thing is the connection to tradition in it, but also the pushing past it and creating new barriers, right? It's like, okay, we could push this just a little bit more, sometimes a lot more, right? So I want to talk about where you pull from most often in your creative process and how did you develop, because it's like a muscle, right? And how did you develop kind of the muscle to be like, no, I'm going to allow myself to pull from these places, churn it through this body and release it?
That's a great question too. To be honest, I have no idea. And it does connect to what you're saying in regards to spirit. I think some of it is that's just how I hear stuff. And I've tried to hear it other ways, but I can't hear it any other way. So that's kind of, I don't know what that's about, but I think it's just about trusting that that's on purpose. And then, I have a lot of different and varied influences, I would say. That's definitely due to my parents and my family, just playing a lot of music from a lot of different places around the world, and just also being a child of the Bay Area. coming up in a lot of different cultures at the same time. And I think that influences the music a lot. And then I think there's a little bit of a collapsing of time, which is one of the things I love the most about music, is that it's been around for so long. And it's, one of the things that's been around since people have been around. And so, you could really literally collapse time by just listening to different things for 1 hour, from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And travel all around the world through it, and really hear so much different stuff. So I think that influences me a lot. And I would say I'm definitely not interested in the question of genre. I'm much more interested, like you say, in the question of story, which I think where the cinematic energy comes in, or the narrative quality is. I think that's the heart of the material for me, and story comes first, topic comes first, and then it's the question of what the best medium to tell it.
I was listening to Kill War, and then I specifically wrote down the word conjuring as I was listening to it. And you talked about in that interview, that I listened to, how, you do have those moments where you will record and then you'll listen back and be like, I don't even know how that came out, right? So you talked about, I'm curious, where do you start? Like, what is, when you decide, is it that you sit down at the piano and you sit there? Do you start with a pen and paper first and write words? What is kind of the way your process works? Or does it change depending on where you are in that moment?
It does always start at the piano for me, because that's really the extension for me of my body and my ideas. And that's where I could pull the sound from the most easily. So it starts usually with the piano and the voice, and just really slowly trying to find the harmonic language for the material. Sometimes I'll have some things written down, or some melodic ideas that I'll put in, sing on my phone, or, write several sentences down as like a jumping off point. But usually it starts with the chords. That's kind of the thing that gets me there, at the starting point. Then from there, it's kind of a free for all. It's different in every situation, and like you said, it's not something that I try to plan out too much, because you have to leave room for, that spirit to come through. So I think a lot of it is just, and I think this is the case with, other types of writing as well. It's just literally sitting there and trying stuff, and not being too uncomfortable with when things aren't working, and just like literally just spending a lot of time sitting there. Okay, this chord works, and go, what's the next one that doesn't work? So let's try it again, try it a different way, and it tends to kind of be that thing where you're searching for an access point. It's almost like you're searching for the doorknob, and then once you open the door, then you get a lot from there. It doesn't necessarily mean the whole song comes from there. Usually it doesn't. Usually it takes, a bunch of different approaches like that to find different pieces of the song. But that tends to be the process where you're kind of spending a lot of time searching for that opening. And then once you find that opening, you can, grab a lot from that moment. And then you kind of collect everything you could collect until the time runs out on that situation. Then you got to figure it out again.
I love that. And I actually think it speaks to the point of I'm going to use the word compromise, which is another word that I wrote down as I was preparing for this conversation. So I'm going to interject a little bit of me real quick, because I'm in this really interesting moment as an artist where I am reconnecting with the truth of the conversation that I've been wanting to have, and trying to not compromise as much on what on what it is that I'm trying to convey, or just let it be what it's going to be. Like, so I'm in this very interesting moments of just kind of trying to connect all of like these disparate pieces, but also to stay true to the conversation that I want to have. So for you, how do you keep, or do you how do you keep it pure? How do you keep the art that we see as close to the thing that you hear or see in your head as possible? Like, how do you make sure that it's not trying to compromise or be something else?
I don't think I have the confidence to know whether or not that's happening. I think I literally just try my best. Because it might be a compromise. I don't know. Sometimes it does feel like that. I think the one thing I try not to compromise is my principles. So I think the biggest process for me in terms of that word is it just connects me with, it's connected to fear for me. Because I think that the process of songwriting for me is the question that you come against the most is, am I afraid to talk about this or not? If you're not talking about anything that doesn't scare you just a little bit, you're probably not really doing anything very important from an artistic perspective to me. So I think that, that question of speaking truth, that's the compromise element that I tried to really refuse that compromise in that space. In terms of the question of the musical process, I think the musical process in a certain way is the opposite, not in terms of, obviously you're trying to get everything perfect, but I think also that for me at least, I'm really just trying to get as close as I can, because if it was up to me, I would just be working on one song forever. But that's not really that's in a certain way, I guess, a selfish act, because the purpose is to share it at some point. And so at some point you have to give it over from, you birthing this thing into being everybody's thing, And so that is an act in compromise, because every section from the writing of it to the presentation of it, the arrangement, the recording, the live performance, you're running against the clock. And so you could work on that thing forever. You could perfect it forever. So there is a compromise in that of figuring out what are the most important elements to refine here, and then what is that point at which I think this is working, and what's that meeting point between detail and improvisation, which is an open space. And I think that's an exciting part too, so you have to be willing to have the courage to let the song go where it wants to go.
Love it, love it. You're about to take the stage at Carnegie Hall, like we said, on February 10th. Two questions. The first is, what does performing live, how does that feel for you? Like, what's that process? Why is that important, right? For Samora getting to get on stage in front of folks to perform. So there. And then two, why is it important that spaces like Carnegie Hall exist to present work like that you've created?
I love live performance. I really believe deeply in live performance. I really believe deeply in the kind of communal energy of people being together in a space and feeling the force of sound moving through it, because sounds are waves. Sound has a force, and there's something very different to the process of listening to music in a space with others versus, listening on your headphones or, listening to a recording. And I think also for my community of collaborators, I think something that's very important to us is that when you're witnessing the live performance, you're not just witnessing or listening to the songs, you're also feeling our community in real time. Because if we're not living the music, then what's the point? Again, it's just another performance, quote unquote. And I think, we need the music too, in that the music helps us to support and protect each other, to, give courage to each other, to make the statements that we want to make, to talk about the things that we're dealing with and be honest about that together, to grieve together, to be present in those spaces together. And so when you're witnessing the live performance, you're not just listening to some songs and they're directed at the audience. Our hope is that the audience is going to bring a bit of themselves. We're bringing all of ourselves to the table. And there's going to be a meeting point in which we all, use the songs as a jumping off point for whatever we need to be, whatever place we need to be at that moment together. And that's when live performance really works at its best. It does require a buy-in from everybody. Sometimes you have that, sometimes you don't. But, you always go in hoping that people are there because they're ready to have an experience, And I think that's what we try to provide. So that's my hope for it. And I think, like I said, that there's going to be a lot of material for people to sink their teeth into in the performance. So that I'm excited about. And as far as the space itself, I think that, for me, I'm just, anytime I get to exist in the same places where people that have inspired me have existed, that's really what I think about the most. I saw a concert bill the other day of some show at Carnegie Hall that was like Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, Nina Simone, and Thelonious Monk on the same bill. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not even going to think about that because that's too ridiculous. So, I'm just coming into it with humility and just trying to do my best to move people on the day and just to be in the same space, sharing that space with, the spirits that have guided me. That's an honor. So I think for me, that's what I'm most excited about for it. And I also do think that, it's a proscenium space, so to speak. And so there's a simultaneous element of wanting to honor that and also provide some, type of what I have to say, or what my kind of, to add my voice to the mix, so to speak, about that.
Mm-hmm. I never do this. This is my co-host. This is a question that would typically come from my co-host, DJ Sir Daniel. But I feel like it's really important here, and it's fun. I'm going to do a fun question for you. And that question is, if there was a person who you cannot see because they've transitioned, what is one artist that you would want to see live, that you have never seen live and you cannot see live in person at this point? Who would be the one artist that comes to mind, and why?
Number one would be Nina, for sure. Just because that's my biggest inspiration. She's the spirit that moved me the most, and her piano playing is severely underrated. Number two would be Coltrane, because that's just a direct line to God in whatever form you believe in that. And number three would be Marvin Gaye.
Ooh, good choices. Good choices. Samora Pinderhughes, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for falling through. You Q Points family now. Thanks for falling through.
Appreciate you. Anytime. Thank you for the beautiful question.
Yes, and you're very welcome. And folks, Samora Pinderhughes will be performing at Carnegie Hall on February 10th. Please go to carnegiehall.org and cop your tickets today. I actually think I might come up to New York. So if you cop some tickets, I might actually have to catch me the bus up to NYC and fall through for the performance as well. So Samora, once again, thank you so much for dropping through Q Points, and have a great rest of your day, and of course, a good performance on the 10th.
Thank you, family. I appreciate it so much.